Jackson, and I'll be taking apart the computer.
Ariana Evans, and I will be discussing the parts as they are displayed on the side.
And Abraham Rivera, I will be putting the computer back together.
First, remove the cover and identify the first piece that you want to remove from your motherboard. The first piece that I will be removing is the heatsink. You want to properly remove the heatsink by unplugging the cord that is connected to the motherboard and unscrewing all 4 screws on each corner counterclockwise. The best way to go about this is to remember lefty loosey and righty tighty. I will now be removing the CPU, or central processing unit, from the motherboard, also known as the brain. For many power functionalities within the computer, you want to slightly undo the clipping to remove it properly. Make sure that you do not put fingerprints on the bottom of it to avoid damage. I will now be removing the random access memory cards, also known as RAM. These are used for short-term memory within the computer. You want to slightly push down on both white clippings to properly pick up the card without causing damage. Next, to remove the hard drive, you want to use the given blue assistant pieces to slightly remove it by unclipping on the designated spots. Before removing the USB ports and optical disk drive, you want to make sure you properly and easily remove the cover face of the front part of the computer by slightly lifting up the computer and unclipping the designated areas. And lastly, you want to make sure that you firmly press against both sides of the USB ports to remove it, but also make sure that the cord is properly unconnected so you will not make damage to the USB ports or the motherboard. To remove the optical disk drive, you want to make sure that you first unscrew the screw that is at the bottom right corner of it, and you want to make sure that you properly disconnect all the cables to avoid damage to the motherboard and the optical disk drive.
The motherboard. The motherboard is a printed circuit board containing the principal components of a computer with connectors into which other circuit boards can be slotted. You can replace other parts of your computer, but you will not be able to replace the whole entire motherboard. The piece that is now showing here would be our USB ports. So this is where you can plug in your universal serial bus, as well as plugging in a mouse or a keyboard or anything like that. So this part here is where you can attach certain devices to. The next piece that we see would be our optical drive. The optical drive is a type of computer disk drive that reads and writes data from optical disk through laser beaming technology. So this is where we would place our CDs to burn them, to write songs on them, as well as to watch DVDs, and so on and so forth. The piece that we have here is what we call your RAM. This is your random access memory. So this is where the short-term memory is stored. The hard drive. The hard drive is a high-capacity, self-contained storage device containing a read-write mechanism plus one or more hard disks inside a sealed unit. This piece that we now see on the screen is what we call our processor, also known as the central processing unit, aka CPU. This is the part of the computer in which operations are controlled and executed. So this is like the main part of the computer. Heatsink. The heatsink is a device or substance for absorbing excessive or unwanted heat. So the heat sink is placed over top of your processor, and this device here will keep your processor cool and it keeps it from overheating.
Alright, so let's get down to business. This is basically an aftermarket plastic protector for your hard drive. You want to make sure it clicks in the right way. You want to be careful with the hose. Don't really want to break anything or force anything onto it. You just pull it, and if it slides into place, you have two arrows that point towards the direction that you should put in first. Once you put it in first, or you hook up the wiring, it's really how you prefer it to oneself. Basically, it all just falls into place. You want to have a lot of patience for this, because don't really want to rush things. It'll all fall into place. Make sure you get a nice clip once you plug in the cables. Then when you put the hard drive down, you should hear a nice click. You want to be careful with any cables that might stop you from locking it in, and then you should hear it. And once that happens, you're all set and ready to go. This would be the USB ports. You want to pull in the cable, pull it on the other side. That way you're not struggling trying to get the cable later. Basically, what happens is you just slide it in, nice, gets a nice little good lock, and you want to be careful with the edges. This is the optical drive. Optical drives is just really simple to put in. Just slide it in. You want to be very careful, very cautious of damaging it. You just hear, like I said before, you just hear a click, and once you hear that click, you're ready to go to the next thing. These are the wirings. You wanna have a lot of patience. Sometimes they can be very fast hooking them up. Sometimes you just gotta give it time. Next, we will be putting in the processor. So this is the CPU. You want to always make sure that the little gold side is facing down. You don't ever want to force it down, push it down, anything like that. This is actually one of the really tricky to assemble, because you have to not only push it down, but you have to lock it in by sliding it a little bit under the little hook. So once that happens, you should be ready to go. Just again, like I said, don't just force it down. You have to slide it in. This would be the RAM. So it's really simple to install. Just basically make sure the RAM slides into place. Get a nice little good hook onto it. Nice click in it, and you should be ready to go. Once that happens, just lock it in, and I'm ready for the next thing. After that is the heat sink. This will be the heat sink cable. Just hook it up, and this should be ready to go. We just move down to where we screw the screws into the motherboard. You want to be very careful with this. Make sure they're all aligned. Don't want to really damage your motherboard or anything like that. So just start screwing them down. Here's a good tip: lefty loosey, righty tighty. But other than that, still it'll probably take a second. I like to start with the adjacent side, one side, then go to the other side. Then I keep rotation like that, and that way it's not too tight on one side or the other. Keeps a nice good balance. Basically, well, yeah. And after that, we just you also don't want to tighten them to the point where they damage the motherboard, but you don't want to leave them too loose. So always keep that in mind. Don't really want to force any more power on the screw, or you really want to use a screwdriver. I wouldn't recommend a drill. That's really a terrible idea, but it again comes down to however you feel like it. If you don't want to struggle, or if you don't want to be the be if you want to be more cautious with everything. But yeah. And after this, we have the front cover. So basically, we just want to slide it in. There's little two hooks on there, and you just want to hook it up. But I'll show you in a second. Oh, almost forgot about the screw. Yeah, you just want to make sure you put in the screw and you hook it up. Once you hook the screw on, you just start screwing it in. It assures that the USB ports You don't move, makes it real nice and steady. Now you want to hook up the panel. The front panel should come first, and basically just clip it in, push it right, and you're good to go on the front panel. Then, last but not least, we just put the top back on, and this will be it. We just assemble the computer.